Amen. Amen. God bless you. Amen. I'm so excited to join each and every one of you all here tonight uh, on After the Message, man. After the Message is um, is what I like to call a conversation piece where we can just simply talk about the message and try to see if we can make the message as flesh as possible by talking about real live examples of what's to occur tonight. And so I see that I'm the one. I will start it off here tonight, which is cool. We're going to go ahead and go forward. But I am excited again. Welcome to I Am the Church Ministries. I'm just elated and excited that you all have joined me tonight to talk about, to share thoughts on yesterday's message. Just in case y'all don't know, I am Pastor Brian, and I'm just excited tonight about After the Message. And so after the message is the conversation piece after the sermon. And what we look to do as we continue to go forward, there will be others that will share what they got from the sermon, what they abstracted from the sermon, and then how they were able to grow. And so if you're here right now, I would like for you to go ahead and share this, comment, like, do what you need to do. I appreciate it. Again, this after the message, something that we do every Monday at 5 o'clock. And so just really appreciate each and every one of you all for tuning in all the time. Usually I would be accompanied by one of the members of I Am the Church Ministries. And so normally that's what will happen. But we'll go ahead and just go forward. I love that we can have these conversations about after the message. So many times in church, we hear messages frequently. We hear messages frequently. And then, like, people may have questions about the message or might not have gotten a real good understanding about the message. And so definitely this is something that you want to think about. And so I know I've had questions after a message. And so we just provide the space, not going to be before you long tonight. But this is that space where we can talk about that. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on into it, shall we? Today, we see that yesterday's message, just in case you haven't caught it, yesterday was our first official launch. I Am the Church Ministries. And definitely what happened was we talked about from grief to joy. Grief to joy, it started off with grief, but it ended with joy. So what was the premise behind that title? When we look at the disciples and where they were locked up behind locked doors, the word says. And so Jesus had told the woman to go ahead and let the brethren know that I'm back. And so she went to go tell them they was behind locked doors because they was afraid of what was to come to them. They saw their leader die, get crucified. And so now they're hiding. They need protection. And they're looking for that. So what happens is they're hiding behind those closed doors, those locked doors. And it's amazing that they are able to stay behind those locked doors because they're afraid. The one who they knew all of this time with them has died. The one who did the miracles, the one who gave them authority to cast out demons and all of that, he died. And so I just want us to think about the locked doors that we may be behind. The tragedy was him being crucified and he died. Many of us, after experiencing something catastrophic, something as critical and crucial as that event, those life events can cause us to get behind locked doors because in our mind, we can process as danger is up ahead. And so with that being said, uh, when we look at what happens in that message, that joy comes because now Jesus shows up and he's in the center. He's able to come through the locked door. And that's the exciting news about the message, is that even though you're behind that locked door, don't know what your locked door is, you can describe that yourself. But Jesus is able to meet you right where you are. Now, it's interesting. I'm asking the disciples, why are y'all behind locked doors when the whole time you knew from the very beginning that he was going to die, but he was actually coming back? So Jesus actually told them what was going to happen, that his hour was here. He told them, I'll be gone for a little while, but I'll be back. And so I just want to talk about a couple of points that we brought out. Was number one, be prepared, but then number two, follow the instructions, and then third and finally, know that Jesus is in the midst of what you're going through. So a lot of times we're prepared. Most of us don't even know that we're going through preparation, right? Most of us are going through preparation for stuff that's going to occur later on down the road, right? You know, a lot of times, and I tell people all the time, don't neglect or don't negate your preparation time, right? And quite often, sometimes, many of us think we're just tuning into something when in fact, this is your preparation time, right? Having these dialogues and conversation is probably preparing somebody out there for something that's about to come ahead. And so what I like about it is I remember, let's just make it flesh. They knew Hurricane Katrina was actually coming down here, right? So they adjusted the levees and all of that. They were preparing for that, right? Could anybody estimate how much damage it would have done down there? Probably not. But it did a lot of damage. But there was there was some type of preparation that was going on. And my question is for a lot of believers out there, is how many of us actually prepare for the trouble that comes ahead? I remember last year, and I'll be honest with you all, and if you are here right now, again, I will encourage you to like, share, and comment. I remember last year when they was talking about the coronavirus, I have to admit, I did not take it serious. Didn't take it serious at all. They was talking about it for like a couple of months. Didn't take it serious at all. Did not know until coronavirus knocked at my door, right? People were going, buying up waters, toilet paper. They went crazy on toilet paper. Some of y'all remember that. They was buying up toilet paper and all of those things. And so what happens is they go ahead, they go forward, and I did not prepare for it. I didn't take it serious. In fact, there was times that I had gotten sick. I got sick last year. And when I got sick last year, I had to like really depend, because I was at a space and a good friend of mine, Pastor Miller, talked about yesterday how when he caught the coronavirus, and he shared this live, so I can share this, but he shared this with the church. He said that, you know, if this was my last time pastoring, he felt as if it was his time to go. And I felt that same way. And so all of those words that were that I had heard for the last few years, those messages, those lessons, those conversations. I had to rely on those words because I was at a point where I wanted to give up and I just wanted to wither away because I was in that much pain, right? And so I was confined to the bed, did not have enough strength. Loved ones had passed away. And so I didn't know what to do, what to expect. I had just started leading the church, didn't know what to do. And so, man, and what I had to do is I really had to trust God. And I had to rely on my preparation, right? I was prepared for the time, but I wasn't prepared for the time. What do you mean by that? I had to rely on the tools that were allotted to me, that was passed down to me to facilitate and to work on going forward. I had those tools. I had been prepared for this time. Now I had to call on what I had been prepared for. And quite often for a lot of us, we don't call on what we've been prepared for. Look at the disciples. I'm in the text. They're in these, they're in this room, locked in. But they was prepared for this time of crucifixion. Jesus told them, the shepherd should be strike and the sheep should scatter. Isaiah told you that. The Sunday school lesson told you that. They spread it. The people ran. But he told them leading up to this event, I'm going to be gone for a little while, but I'm coming back. I'll be gone for a little while, but in a little while, I'll be back. They did not understand what he was saying, did not understand the full details. And a lot of times, that's why when you hear words or when you're a part of like a conversation, things like that, you need to be putting some things in your bag. You need to put some things in your toolbox because there will become a time where you will have to call on those tools to help you navigate through the muddy waters that you have to travel through. And so most times people shout all of that and etc. But I'm like, man, when the storm shows up, are you really prepared? Are you really prepared for what's to come? Are you really prepared for what's about to happen? Many people don't understand that we are prepared for a whole lot of stuff, but we have to rely on our preparation. Last year, at that very critical moment, I had to rely on my preparation. Man, and it was hard. I lost loved ones, right? The disciples lost a loved one, but yet he came back. He prepared them for this moment, in this time, in this space, to come forward. And so just like he has prepared them for this time, guess what? God prepares us. Hey, man, what is your preparation like? Right? If you're going to transition from grief to joy, right? And know that Jesus was in the midst of them and he gave them comfort. First of all, he comforted them when he got there. He said, peace be among you. It is I. Right? And if I could just get in that room where they are, when you in your waiting room, because that's the series that we're preaching on all month long, right? When you're in your waiting room, there's other people. Sometimes there's other people in the waiting room, right? The disciples are caved up in this room. Now, you would think somebody in the crowd would have said, man, cheer up. Jesus prepared us for this time. Y'all, we got to hold fast and be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. We're going to be okay. But everybody in the waiting room has some heavy weight on them. So you would think that somebody out of the crowd would have called on what they had been taught. Nobody did. And so that's why we have to facilitate who's in our waiting room with us, right? And I'm not saying, please, because you can't neglect the human experience, but don't do away with the emotions that you deal with, because you're going to feel them, right? I do not subscribe to the to this way, this Christianity where it says do away with your feelings and all of that. No, you're supposed to feel. That's what they're there for. However, you don't let your feelings and your emotions control your path. The word says the steps of a good man is ordered by God. And so what happens is when you're drawn into your emotions, it clouds your thinking and it stirs up your spirit. And now all of a sudden, it seems like you're distanced from God. So those are things that we have to be mindful and consider, right? You are going to feel some sadness. You are going to feel some grief. You are going to feel some pain. But how do I transition from grief to joy, right? Now, for the loved ones that went on, they didn't come back, but I have the hope and the faith I will see them again. However, I know for the ones that have went on, I'm like, I'm sad, but I'm so glad that they're not here suffering anymore. Right? Now, it took me some time to get there. But then also, as I look at my journey last year, and I talked about how tedious the journey was for me last year. Just started pastoring, leading the church. The pandemic happened. I don't know what to do. And quite honest, a whole lot of pastors didn't know what to do. We never experienced nothing like this before. But yet, for all of the great things that came out of 2020, the Lord showed up. And so it caused me, you would think for something as traumatic as last year, you would think that would have caused me to fall away from God. But actually, I had to, man, it led me to get closer to God. But now I want to talk to the folks, because it takes time to get to that point. But I want to talk to the folks who are going through that tragedy and they find themselves distancing themselves from God, right? Because that's a bad place when you're distancing yourself from God. Because when you're distancing yourself from God, God has not walked away or moved away because the tragedy happens. And I can't wait to talk about next week's sermon. Oh my gosh. But that's not the time we are supposed to distance ourselves. See, most people like to social distance from God when trouble shows up. Why me? I do what I'm supposed to do. Why did I have to go through this? When I look at last year was a transition for me. All of the stuff that happened, man, led to this point where I'm at right now. Organized visionary for I Am the Church Ministries. Did not know. But I had to rely on my preparation. I found out that the word is powerful. You know it. But when it reaches your heart, when you connect with it, it's a difference. As I look in the comment section, Minister Lauren says, in your sermon, you talked about reaching the point of feeling joy. What do you do when you get to joy, but it doesn't seem like it lasts long? It feels like you're going right back into grief. All right. So for a situation like that, because from a traumatic experience, you're still going to have that trauma, right? And after you have like transitioned to that joy, right, before you can reach that joy, like full joy, between grief and joy, in the middle is healing, right? In the middle of grief to joy is healing, right? You experience days when you have more energy, and then you have like low days, right? And so the question becomes, because joy is something on the inside. You got to ask yourself, is that really joy? Or is it, I just had a good day? And most of the times we have good days, and then we like to, we say stuff like, I want to name and claim and all of that. And it's like, but if I'm not being honest, if I'm not being real with where I'm at, right? For example, with me and how I'm feeling about a father figure of mine, Pastor Burgess, right? I have relief that, okay, he's not suffering all of that. And I have some good days, but then I have some days where I'm really missing him, right? But now I'm at the point where I'm one with how I felt, how it made me feel about him leaving. My father, same thing. I was doing good, but then there was some moments, it just took me under. And so if I can experience true healing, meaning I have to identify and acknowledge, because most people like to say, oh, I'm just happy, I got it, I'm good, and sometimes you're not. And it's okay to be there. But you got to ask yourself, how do I get to that? What is that step? Number one, if I'm going to graduate from grief to joy, knowing that God is in the midst of all of that, if I'm going to heal from that experience, because he came back, but all of the stuff that he went through, that stuff don't just leave away, right? You still carry some of that stuff. Honestly, the way 2020 played out for me, phenomenal, but my mind goes back to some situations. And you will have that. That's part of the human experience. There's a human experience, there's a spiritual experience, right? So between grief to joy, before you get to joy, because it's not just 1 week you're gonna have you just gonna grieve, and then next week gonna have joy. You'll have good days in between, then you'll have your low bad days. If you're gonna come out of grief, acknowledge where you are. Start by identifying where you are. That's number one. Then number two, start to talk about how it made you feel. Describe those feelings that you're feeling. Be honest about where you are. But then more importantly, don't forsake this point. The most important thing you have to do is you have to have God in it too. Because now with the trauma piece, man, it can ooze over to a spiritual problem. And your spirit needs to be repaired. It needs to be rejuvenated. It needs to be revived. It needs to be resuscitated. Right? So I need to get my joy out of the grave. Right? I told you, acknowledge where you are. Be honest about how it made you feel. But just know, if you're going to get to that level of that joy, you got to have God in it. God got to be in. You have to constantly be in communication, because most of the times what happens is we repair our physical and mental, but we neglect the spiritual damage that goes on as well. And so I have to be in constant commune with God. This is one of the reasons why you all here, I Am the Church Ministries. I don't know if you all have seen it, but I got us doing a prayer challenge, 5 a.m., 12 p.m. It's our time to commune with God. Even if you at work, wherever you are, say that prayer at 12. If you at work at 5, say that prayer at 5. Be in a communication about where you are. Go to therapy, but also go to God. Go to God, go to therapy, right? But then also know that therapy, a lot of times, even if you don't go seek professional help, a lot of times therapy is a conversation. with somebody that, uh, um, you know, that's a listening ear. Healing, the form of healing takes place in so many different forms. I don't even have enough time to explain what that looks like. Right. They complement each other. Yes, thank you, Dr. Melody. She don't like me calling her that, y'all, but that's all right. Right. So that's the thing. Between grief and joy, the big H word, healing. Heal your mind, heal your body, heal your spirit. What I didn't know and what I had to learn about my sickness, because once I found out about the blood clots on my lungs and all of that, when I heard that news, I didn't focus so much on the blood clots. In my mind, I'm like, I got stuff to do, I got responsibilities and obligations to do, what have you. But what happened is it didn't draw me in, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna be healed from this. My mind, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be healed from this. I'm gonna be all right. And they gave me that shot, and then I was on blood thinners. I'm grieving over a close father figure of mine, but I had to acknowledge where I was. I'm like, man, this hurts. It hurts like hell. This is how you get from grief to joy. You got to experience healing. For the disciples, when they experienced this traumatic event of him being crucified and dying and fearing for their lives, the healing had to take place. And Jesus came among them, said, peace be among you. He spoke it, his presence. And how many of us, from a spiritual aspect, just being in his presence is healing? How am I able to get back in his presence and just give him what was left of me? And that's what that's all about. In your waiting room, what are you doing to prepare to transition out of the waiting room? Because once you go into the waiting room, they call your name and all of that. What are you going to do when they call your name? What preparation are you diving into? Those are the things that we want to start thinking about as we go further. Right? From grief to joy, healing is in the middle. As I close this discussion out, you can leave your comments down. Next week's sermon, this Sunday sermon coming up, I'm gonna talk about when faithfulness and circumstances are at odds with each other. I'm gonna talk about when faithfulness and circumstances are at odds. Right? You ever heard people say, what you put out is what you get back? How do you deal with uh, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with uh, what you get out and you're not receiving it back? So next week's sermon is going to be about when faithfulness and circumstances are at odds. They're completely opposite from each other. How do we handle that? Right? These are things that we actually experience, right? And I don't want people to neglect, because the word says the natural first, then the spiritual. But don't neglect the human experience, right? The human and the spirit operates together. Your spirit is the one that has to, like, hey, bring you right on over. But then also there's some wounds that the human side has to heal from. But overall, you got to repair that spirit too. It's all in one. All of it encompasses you, the human being. So that's what After the Message is all about. Diving into the message, looking at it from diving deeper, right? If you have not seen the message, I encourage you all to go to I Am the Church Ministries fan page on Facebook, or you go on YouTube, I Am the Church. You go on Twitch at I Am Church Ministries, and you can replay that sermon from grief to joy. And then you can tune into After the Message. This is what After the Message is all about. Because I submit to you, a whole lot of us are struggling. Right? And it's okay to struggle. Yeah. It's totally fine. It's not okay if you're struggling and you don't acknowledge that you're struggling. That develops a bigger and deeper problem, right? So those are the things that I want to submit to you. Dr. Melody, she says, grief is a cycle, a journey. Joy will come to be more of what you experience over time, but your grief will lessen. It just takes time. It does. Are you willing to put in that work? Are you willing to put in that work and allow yourself? I can't give you a time frame, right? The word says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning, right? And people take that literal. You're going to cry all night, but joy when you wake up, it's going to be all right, right? That, like I said, honestly, when you have been impacted greatly, it takes you time, right? It takes you time, right? And so it's a process, you all. And so that's what After the Message is all about. Now holding you all along tonight. Again, the prayer challenge, you all. Right. There is no time frame. Every grief experience is different. That is true. Some things you can like that, and then some things it's a process. Allow that inner self to go through that. Don't rob yourself from that process. And so many of us, we rob ourselves from that process. We rob ourselves by denying. We rob ourselves because we feel like we don't want to put the time in it and we should be over it by now. You're going to forever be impacted by something. It's going to take yourself time. I wish I could get into the clinical part, all of that, but I don't have time tonight. That's not where I'm going tonight. But I just want to put that in your lap, right? Remember your preparation. Remember the instructions. Now, since you remember it, once you come to remember it, put it into action. Faith without works is dead. You can't have all this information and you don't use it. You got to use it at some point. Yes, Dr. Melody, we're going to hook that up one day. Right? So I want you all to be praying for it. Be praying for our brothers and sisters that are suffering silently. Because I will submit to you, a whole lot of people are suffering silently. And so that is my time this evening. Again, I'm Pastor Brian. The 5 a.m., 12 p.m. challenge prayer. Let's do it. All right. And then tune in Wednesday night for our inspirational word at 7:00 p.m. And then also our services on Sunday begin at 10 and then also at 12:30. And so I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Everybody that's in the comment section, appreciate each and every one of you all. This has been phenomenal. This is what After the Message is all about, having that conversation after the sermon, right? And let me just add this one bit and I'm gone. When you go grocery shopping, you don't eat all your groceries in the same day. And if you do, you need one hell of a paycheck. But anyway, but when you buy groceries, you don't use them all in that one day, right? You may use them in like a couple of days or a week and a half. Every time we get a word, a lot of times we don't use it all at one time, right? Some things you can use from now, and then some things you just need to store it up. And just like when the coronavirus, you need to store up some waters and stuff like that. What are you stirring up? Storing up. Sorry, can't talk tonight. What are you storing up tonight? Because some word can speak to your right now, and then it could speak to your future. Right. So that's all the time that I have. Thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I will see you all Sunday. Again, tune in Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Catch us for part two, the waiting room series on Sunday. Again, the sermon on Sunday is when faithfulness and circumstances are at odds. And then catch us right here next Monday for after the message. Pray that y'all have been blessed. I know I have. Thank you for